found out about my long-distance relationship with rich guy and decided to kick me out. Hi, Reddit. Longtime fan of this app. I am coming on here today to share my story about a very sad event that occurred recently. My boyfriend dumped and kicked me out because he found out about my long-distance relationship with another guy. Now, first of all, before you judge me, I have already judged myself and I know that I am guilty. I am not here to be judged or to seek solace or advice. I am here to share my story and use here as a medium to vent. Also, it would be a plus if someone or some cheater somewhere were to see my story and learn from it. Some backstory so you understand where I am coming from. My name is Haley and I met my boyfriend Skylar in high school. Skylar was a total package. Blonde hair, blue eyes, extremely smart, and captain of the football team. Everybody liked Skylar and everybody wanted to be seen with him. I, on the other hand, was the total opposite. I was a geek and not a smart geek either. I was one of the dumb ones. I wasn't very attractive, I was relentlessly bullied, and so I had bad self-esteem issues, made worse by the fact that I was severely failing in school. I even developed eating issues, and it only got worse for me. And then, amazingly, like out of those movie scenes where something quirky brings together the handsome male lead and the weird, geeky romantic interest, Skylar came along. Except my story was absolutely real. Skylar came along. Since my grades were failing, my mom called in a favor with Skylar's mom and got him to tutor me. It was amazing. At first, Sky was very professional about it. He would come after school, help me for an hour or so, and then leave. My mom paid him, of course. However, as time went on, he started hanging out with me more and genuinely wanted to be my friend. He wanted to be seen with me. He didn't feel embarrassed by me. Within a few days of hanging out with Skylar, my reputation skyrocketed. There was no more bully, name-calling, and pranks. Skylar genuinely cared for me and he made sure to protect me. A few months after hanging out and we were dating, Skylar absolutely transformed me. He made me start paying attention to my appearance as I wanted to look good for me. He never criticized me or said anything about my appearance, but years of low self-esteem made me overthink everything. I started getting into makeup more, getting better clothes and styling my clothes well. I also started working out and I got into very good shape. In fact, I was 100 times better looking than before. Years later, and currently I am 25 years old. Same thing with my boyfriend, or should I say ex-boyfriend as he has dumped me. We started living together years ago in college. All this backstory is just so you get a sense of what I and my boyfriend have been through and how much we improved. Unfortunately, despite Skylar's best efforts, my studies never improved much, and honestly, I think that is as a result of a lack of concentrated effort on my part. And after getting my dream body, I became obsessed with maintaining it. Every energy and effort I had went into maintaining my beauty, so little effort was left for books. Skylar tried his best, and honestly, it was only due to that best that I graduated college and even high school. I barely passed, and now I regret it. You'll understand why later. I had always dreamed of being a trophy wife. Maybe it is due to all those years of bullying and being ignored by the opposite gender. But I grew to enjoy attention. I wanted to be someone's trophy wife. I wanted to be a complete stay-at-home mom. I honestly envisioned a life where I could just stay home and relax and take care of the kids while my husband would work and provide well for us. Now that I think about it, that was a very stupid idea. But I honestly did not know better then. Skylar was trying his best. He was earning well, but not as well as I wanted. I was a little bothered by it, but Skylar was so well set up that I knew that in a few years he would be earning a lot more. Also, he did a bit of freelancing on the side, and he was well sought after and never ran out of clients. So all in all was well. Sky also took care of all the bills in the house and also took care of me and my expenses, like skincare, wardrobe changes, shoes, bags, and of course he paid fully whenever we went out with our friend group or alone. I was a very quiet and reclusive person back then in school, but that was as a result of my low self-esteem and appearance. After I took care of myself more, I started becoming way more social, and Sky encouraged it. Everyone in our friend group was jealous as we had a seemingly perfect relationship, especially the girls. They envied the fact that I didn't work, but was so well taken care of by my boyfriend. Of course, Sky and I had issues about this, but all I could get was a minimum wage job as I barely graduated, and had never worked in my life, so he let it be. Since I was home all day while Sky worked except when I went out with friends, I started getting more into games, most especially IMVU. I loved IMView. I reveled in the fact that I could be anybody on there. But anybody that has played IMView knows that it costs money to actually enjoy the game. I started needing more money from Sky. I wanted to be absolutely fabulous, not only in the game, but also in real life. And that meant steady wardrobe changes, new and expensive stuff, and so on and forth. Sky was willing to a certain degree. Sky often thought my requests were unreasonable, especially when it came to spending money on IMVU for virtual badges and clothes. While he was okay with giving me some cash for gaming, he thought a lot of it was just silly. He was saving up for a house and didn't want to waste money on things he considered unnecessary. But I disagreed. I mean, he had already saved up way more than we needed for the down payment on the house. So why couldn't I have a bit of fun with the extra cash? It caused tension between us because while he was all about being smart with money, I just wanted to enjoy myself a little. That's where I really messed up. One day, while I was playing on IMVU like usual, I noticed someone had gifted me some clothes. I was thrilled because it was something I really wanted and had on my wish list. I had been waiting for Sky to give me some cash so I could buy it, but he wasn't handing out money like before. He was all about saving up for our future, which I thought was kind of unreasonable considering how much he already had saved. But whenever I tried to argue, he'd just tell me to get a job if I wanted more money for gaming. He had a point, and it shut me up every time. I knew deep down that I should get a job, but I didn't want to. So I slid into the DMs of the person who gifted me the clothes to thank them, and we ended up chatting. His name was Jason, and he was 30 years old. We hit it off pretty quickly and found we had a lot in common. It felt easy to connect with him, and he was more than willing to give me more clothes. As I got more involved with Jason outside of IMVU, I spent a lot of time chatting with him. He was kind of full of himself, but he kept sending me cool stuff and even some money. This made me forget about any concerns I had about his personality. Meanwhile, my boyfriend Skylar started noticing that I was acting different. Instead of paying attention to him, I was always on my phone talking to Jason. Skylar got worried when he saw all the packages arriving at our door and the extra spending on our bank account. He asked me where all the money was coming from, and I didn't know how to explain. I made up a story about freelancing to make it seem like I was contributing to our finances. Skylar didn't buy it, though, and I could tell he didn't trust me. But I stuck to my story, using his own suggestion that I find a job against him to justify my lies. As my relationship with Jason grew, so did the distance between Skylar and me. I found comfort in Jason's attention and gifts, even though deep down, I knew I was hurting Skylar and our future together. Jason hinted that he'd be willing to give me even more money if we took our relationship to the next level. At first, I was skeptical about mixing money with romance, but then it dawned on me. Jason lived states away. A long-distance relationship with him seemed like the perfect solution. It meant I could enjoy the perks without having to deal with the complications of a traditional relationship and cheating on Skylar. So, despite my initial doubts, I agreed to take things further with Jason. As Jason and I kept going, he kept sending me money. A lot. And me, being not so smart, just kept spending it all on fancy stuff like bags, shoes, and clothes. Instead of thinking about saving or investing the cash, I just went wild with it, chasing after the high of owning expensive things. With each purchase, I transformed into this glitzy, glamorous version of myself. But while I was looking all fancy, I was actually being pretty dumb about money. I didn't think about saving for the future or anything like that. Nope, I just blew it all on stuff that made me look good in the moment. Our friends were all green with envy, thinking Skylar was the one behind all my swanky new gear. Skylar himself was kind of puzzled by the sudden change in my spending habits. But since I wasn't really asking him for much money anymore, he figured it wasn't hurting anyone. So why argue, right? Plus, it meant he could stash away even more cash for our future goals, like buying a house, investing, and even saving for the raining days. But here's the thing. While everyone thought I was living it up thanks to Skylar's generosity, the reality was a bit more complicated. Behind the scenes, Jason was the one greasing the wheels of my flashy lifestyle. And while Skylar might have been cool with the whole situation, I was skating on thin ice, blindly chasing after luxury without thinking about the consequences. For a while, things seemed to be smooth sailing with Jason, but then he started getting pushy. He brought up the idea of flying over to see me, but I wasn't keen on the idea. Mind you, we both live in the United States, just we live in different states. Sure, I enjoyed Jason's money, but my heart belonged to Skylar. I'd known him my whole life, and I adored him. Plus, he took such good care of me. If it came down to it, there was no question. I'd choose Skylar over Jason any day. Besides, when I compared their looks, Skylar was like a Greek god, while Jason, well, let's just say he didn't quite measure up in the looks department. But it wasn't just about looks. The thought of lying to Skylar and sneaking off to see Jason filled me with dread. Skylar was no fool. He'd see through any lie I tried to spin in a heartbeat. Plus, he knew all my friends and family, so there was no way I could pull off a secret rendezvous without raising suspicion. So I kept putting off Jason's visit, coming up with one excuse after another. I told him I was busy with work, even though I didn't work, or that I had family obligations to attend to. Anything to buy myself more time and avoid him flying down to see me. It seems my lies couldn't hold up forever. My vanity blinded me to the truth, and Skylar's suspicions finally reached a breaking point. And then it happened. One night when I was fast asleep, Skylar took a dive into my phone. He must have sensed something was off and decided to investigate. He didn't stop there, though. He went through my laptop and even checked out my IMVU account. Skylar's no slouch. He connected the dots between my love for the game and the sudden gifts and money from Jason. Every message I exchanged with Jason was laid out before him, showing him the truth I'd been hiding. I can only imagine the pain he went through right there. And I can only imagine the mix of emotions running through Skylar's head. Anger, hurt, disbelief. Realizing that the person he trusted most had been lying to him must have hit hard. Skylar didn't waste any time waiting for me to wake up on my own the next morning. He startled me awake by pouring a glass of water right onto my face. I practically jumped out of my skin. Well, I definitely screamed my lungs out. Confused and drenched, I demanded to know what the heck he was thinking and why he'd pulled such a stunt. But he didn't even glance at me. He didn't say a word in response. Instead, he just coldly ordered me to pack up my stuff and leave. At first, I was completely bewildered by Skylar's abrupt demand. But when he finally turned to face me and uttered those damning words about knowing about Jason, I felt like the ground could have opened up and swallowed me whole right then and there. It was like everything came crashing down in an instant. In a desperate attempt to salvage the situation, I begged and pleaded with Skylar, insisting that I'd never physically cheated on him because I'd never even met Jason in person. But Skylar wasn't having any of it. He saw right through my feeble excuses and laid it out plain and simple. I'd been emotionally cheating on him with Jason. Accepting money from Jason while lying about my relationship status? To Skylar, that was betrayal, plain and simple. And in his eyes, that was cheating. I tried everything I could think of, but Skylar wasn't having it. Tears were streaming down my face as I begged him to listen. But he just kept packing my stuff like he was on a mission. He didn't even look at me as he spoke, his words hitting me like a ton of bricks. He told me I should be grateful he didn't kick me out the night before. It felt like a punch to the gut, realizing how close I'd come to losing everything because of my mistakes. As I watched him pack up my life, I knew deep down that things would never be the same between us. Skylar didn't waste any time. After packing up all my belongings, he unceremoniously tossed them out onto the porch. With a stern expression, he swung the door wide open and pointed outside, giving me no room for argument. It was crystal clear. He wanted me gone, and he wanted it now. I couldn't argue with Skylar's firmness. Tears kept flowing down my cheeks as he insisted I leave. He made it clear. Either I walked out willingly or he'd have to push me out, but he wouldn't lay a hand on me. Knowing things could escalate if I didn't leave peacefully, I swallowed my pride and stepped outside. Sitting on the porch with all my stuff, waiting for the Uber, felt like forever. I couldn't help but feel the stares of my nosy neighbors, wondering what was going on. Yep, there I was, all my stuff strewn across the porch like some kind of chaotic yard sale. And you better believe the neighbors were curious. They couldn't help but peek out their windows or crane their necks to see what the fuss was about. Honestly, I couldn't even blame them. If the roles were reversed and I saw something like this happening in my usually quiet neighborhood, I'd be nosy too. I'd probably be one of the first to poke my head out the window and try to catch a glimpse of the drama unfolding next door. After what felt like an eternity, the Uber finally pulled up, and I hastily loaded my belongings into the car. Skylar had long closed the door, and there was no goodbye, no last glance, just silence. As the car pulled away from the curb, a wave of defeat washed over me. It was like every ounce of strength had been drained from my body. I sat there in the back seat, feeling lost and utterly alone. I didn't even know where to go from there. I had no plan, no destination in mind. All I knew was that I couldn't stay here, not after what had happened. Skylar wouldn't allow it, so with a heavy heart, I realized my only option was to return to my parents' house, with my tail tucked firmly between my legs. Arriving at my parents' house, I felt even more defeated than before. It was like every ounce of strength had been drained from my body, leaving me feeling utterly exhausted. I was so out of it that the Uber had to remind me we'd reached our destination. Stepping out of the car, I was hit with another blow. Our joint accounts had been completely drained. I couldn't even pay the Uber driver. It was a harsh reminder of just how dire my situation had become. With no other options left, I had to swallow my pride and go inside the house to ask my parents for help. Skylar had control over our joint account, and every penny in there was rightfully his. We had separate individual accounts too, his for savings, mine for the money Jason sent me. But those were of no help now. I couldn't blame Skylar for draining the joint account. After all, it was his money. He'd always been the one to handle our bills and expenses, while I spent what I had from Jason's gifts. But now, with nothing left to my name and no way to even pay for a ride, I realized just how dependent I'd become on Skylar's generosity. It was a humbling experience, to say the least, and one that left me feeling more lost and alone than ever before. My arrival at my parents' house must have been a shock for everyone. I could see the surprise in my brothers' and parents' faces as they took in the sight of me with all my belongings. They probably had a million questions racing through their minds, but when they saw the exhaustion etched on my face, they decided to hold off on the interrogation. Instead, my mom wasted no time in whipping up something for me to eat. It was a simple gesture, but it meant the world to me in that moment. After filling my stomach, I didn't waste any time. I headed straight to bed, feeling like I could sleep for 1,000 years. Despite the chaos swirling around me, there was a sense of comfort in being back home, surrounded by my family's love and support. Honestly, as I drifted off to sleep, I knew that no matter what happened next, I wouldn't have to face it alone, and that made me so happy. When I woke up, I didn't even need to explain what had happened to my parents. They had assumed I had a fight with Skylar and decided to leave, but they were puzzled because they knew we never fought like that. However, while I was catching up on some much-needed sleep, Skylar had taken matters into his own hands and called my parents. He wasted no time in filling them in on the whole situation. When my parents tried to defend me, Skylar abruptly ended the call. But that wasn't all. Skylar went one step further and sent them screenshots of everything, laying out the whole messy truth for them to see. Waking up to that reality was a harsh reminder of just how much damage had been done. There was no hiding from the truth now, and I couldn't help but feel a pang of shame at the thought of my parents seeing me in such a light. My parents were really disappointed in me. They absolutely loved Skylar. He'd been with me since high school, supporting me through thick and thin. Skylar even helped me deal with bullies back then, which meant a lot to me. So when my parents found out what happened, they didn't hold back. For the next hour, they laid into me, scolding me like there was no tomorrow. It hurt, knowing I'd let them down and messed things up with Skylar. Their disappointment was like a punch to the gut, and I felt lower than low. It was a tough wake-up call. It reminded me of the mess I'd made and the trust I'd broken. My parents tried to find a silver lining in the mess. They said I was lucky because I never took things to a physical level with Jason, and we never met face to face. They believed this gave us a chance to fix things. They came up with a plan: wait a few days for Skylar to cool off, then stage an intervention. We'd all plead with him to give me another chance. As part of the deal, I'd promised to delete my IMVU account and even all my social media. It stung, especially since I had a decent following online. But honestly, I'd have done anything to win Skylar back. While waiting for the right moment to talk to Skylar, My parents urged me to take it easy and rest up. They also pushed me to keep messaging Skylar, begging for forgiveness. When I finally checked my messages, I saw that Skylar had dropped a bomb in our group chat by posting the screenshots. It was like he'd exposed me to everyone. There was shock all around, but deep down, I sensed that some of them were secretly relieved. They'd always been jealous of me and Skylar. Feeling overwhelmed by it all, I decided to bail from the group chat and block all those fake friends. They were never really there for me when it counted. And then I gingerly crawled back into bed, seeking solace from the mess that had become my life. For a few days, my routine was pretty simple: eat, sleep, and send desperate messages to Skylar. Even though he didn't reply, the fact that he hadn't blocked me kept a glimmer of hope alive. After a week passed, my parents decided it was time to make a move. We headed to Skylar's apartment, unsure if he'd even be there. The first time we went, he wasn't home, and we had to leave empty-handed. But this time, luck was on our side. When we arrived, Skylar was actually there. It was the first time we'd seen him since everything went down. Skylar looked exhausted, but he was still as good-looking as ever. Despite feeling guilty and sad, seeing him there made me fall for him all over again. I regretted my mistake more than ever. Even in his tired state, Skylar was nice to my parents. He welcomed them into his place with open arms. It was tough seeing him deal with the mess I'd made, and I wished I could take it all back. But it was also a wake-up call, reminding me of the importance of making things right. No matter how much my parents pleaded, Skylar wouldn't budge. He flat out refused to give me another chance, listing off all the ways I'd let him down. He didn't mince words, calling me out for not pulling my weight around the house despite not having a job. It was a harsh reality check, hearing all my shortcomings laid bare like that. Skylar made it crystal clear that forgiveness wasn't in the cards, and he advised me to accept it and move on before things got even worse. It stung like hell, but deep down I knew he was right. Leaving Skylar's place was tough. I was sad and heartbroken, but I tried to comfort myself with the thought that I still had Jason to fall back on. Sure, Jason wasn't exactly the Prince Charming type like Skylar was, and I didn't love him like I loved Skylar. But he was loaded, and I figured I could use him until I found someone better. I hadn't been responding to his messages during the whole ordeal with Skylar, but now I reached out. I didn't have to wait long for a reply, but it wasn't what I expected. Jason's response hit me like a ton of bricks. He basically told me to never message him again and called me a liar. Skylar had gotten to him, and now I was left with nothing and no one to turn to. So, what I'm trying to say is, cheating isn't worth it. Losing Skylar hurts even more because he had set us up so well, and our future looked promising. But now, because of my actions, I've lost him for good. It's a painful reminder that betraying someone's trust can cost you everything, even a future you once dreamed of.